I work in an NGO called People's Solidarity for Participatory Democracy, such a long name. But we are also the part of the coalition April 16 of the Sewol ferry disaster. So since the disaster happened last April, I was one that my office actually sent me to Ansan to spend some time with the families, to help them if they need anything, and also help them to do the National Assembly advocacies. So I was actually spending some time with the families to see how they struggle and what they were fighting for. So to give you an overview about what really happened in the past 1.5 years, I want to go through the details about each month, what we've done, why families are still on the street after 1.5 years already passed the Sewol ferry tragedy happened, and what they really want from the government. There are three main messages that the families want to say to the general public as well as the government. The first one is the rise of the Sewol ferry, because already it happens 1.5 years ago. The ferry is still under the sea, and there was not even strong attempt or trial from the government to rise the ferry. Second is to find the truth of the Sewol ferry tragedy. And thirdly is to establish a safer society, because Sewol families always argue that they do not want other people to experience the same thing that they experienced from this incident. So they want to make a safer society by providing those, changing the rules and regulations about this kind of safety measures in a society. I think you already saw from the video, this is the day of the Sewol ferry incident. Every Korean that I've met, even they live in Korea or live abroad, like in Germany, they have their own memories of the day. And I think that's actually people are very traumatized about what happened in Sewol ferry tragedy. I myself, I had a meeting on the day. I went to work, and my colleague said that, oh, did you hear the ferry sank? And I was like, oh, really? And then after 10 minutes, she was like, oh yeah, but I think everyone is saved, And we were very relieved. So I had a normal day. I had a meeting. I went to bar after work with my friends. And then the next day that I came to the office and I heard that actually nobody was saved. My mom was watching TV at home. She thought it was a movie because she was watching the video from the news, and then they say that, oh, the ferry sunk, there are like 304 people, no, more than that actually, 450 something people were in the ferry, but my mom couldn't see anyone who was actually near the sea. She couldn't see any boat, and she thought like, is it lie or something, what is really going on? When I talk to the families, they have their own memories of the day as well. One child, he wanted to be a model. I want to become emotional when I talk about these stories. Forgive me. And then every single children have their own stories, and then every mothers and every fathers, every family members, they have their own stories about the day. Somebody, I think you already saw from the video, somebody talk about the text messages they've got. Somebody talk about the last image of their child to say bye to their parents when they leave the door. Somebody remembers that, oh, my son, my daughter said that they're going to bring me something from Jeju Island, which is also a beautiful island in Korea. So they talk about those stories and memories, and then, when I'm with the families, they keep talking over and over and over and over and over again, the same stories for hours and hours. And after a few months spending with them, I realized that that's because they don't want their family members are being forgotten by people. They don't want them to be forgotten from other people's memory. Maybe it's a tiny little thing happens, very little usual daily lives, but they don't want their children to be forgotten. So April 16th, the thing happened, and I think about what happened in the stadium in Jindo, all those kind of things. There was a mistrust, shoutings, fightings. So many people went down to Jindo Stadium, asked them they want to help these families, but later on it was found that there was police officers, so many dramas. Even our lawyers who went down to Jindo to provide some pro bono works, they were actually being kicked out by the family members because family didn't trust there is any lawyers who can provide pro bono services. And then they also didn't trust the civil society at the beginning. But in May, the major broadcasting company, the Korean broadcasting company, actually described the Sewol ferry tragedy as if it's a car accident. And that actually made all the family members outrageous. So they brought every children's photo, and they actually marched towards to the broadcasting company, and they actually, they protested in front of there. And then they marched all the way to the Blue House. My office is right next to Blue House, so I was like, I couldn't take those photos and things like that. When they arrived at the Blue House, at that time they were still saying to the president, please meet us. They're very polite, huh? Like, please meet us, please provide us some time. You promised me that we can come to see you and talk to you whenever we want. They stayed whole night, overnight, in front of that place, asking for the meeting with the president. And for more than 24 hours, we didn't hear anything from the Blue House. You see there are police, the yellow wall next to it is actually police officers. They're all surrounded by police officers like that. Nobody could see inside, nobody could come out from the area. We could also, thankfully, we could provide the food and then also the water and all those kind of things inside. But there are just parents who lost their kids, and then they were wearing the funeral costume with their photos of their children on their hand, and then how can they actually harm the Blue House, and why do we need that excessive use of force? And I think that's the time that families started to realize that the government is not there on their side anymore. Of course, when the first thing happened, so many people, including ruling party, opposition party, they come to family members saying that we will help you, we'll be here forever until the last day, until the day that you will find your babies, I'm going to be here. But I think that's the moment that families actually realize that they're not on their side. So families decide to go on the street because they know the government is not going to do the job for them. What we ask for is independent and transparent investigation. So we ask the government to set up the special committee who have a full access to the information and also can investigate and indict those perpetrators. We researched about 911 Commission and also Fukushima Commissions and all those kind of different things. That's why civil society members and also family members went on the street and started to collect the petition on the street. That was the time that I work the most hardest, I think, during my work time. Every Saturday, the civil society members divided the region in Seoul, the capital city of Korea. So I go to Seoul station, the subway, tube station, that another organization go to different parts. So every Saturday for 6 hours and 7 hours, we collect petitions. Families didn't join at the beginning, but later on they decided to do the campaign with us because at the beginning they feel shy. But I had to witness that some very conservative groups comes to the family members and then ask them that, what do you want? Do you want more money? You lost your child and then that was an accident. What can government do about it? So then I had to see that family has to turn back and then cry at the corner of the street because they couldn't bear with it. But whenever they face that kind of situation, I can also hear that they keep saying that I can do it because I'm the mother. I can do it because I'm the father. I have to do it because of my children. That was actually the most heartbreaking part for me. I think I decided to be an activist. I decided to choose my job to be an activist. And it's quite normal for me to face police violences. Well, it's not normal in democratic society, but it's understandable, because I choose to be there, I choose to be at the protest site, I choose to be there with people. But these family members are like my mom and dad. They don't know anything about politics. They had no chance, a single chance in their life that they had to stand in front of everybody and tell them that they want truth in their life. They were so scared actually when they went on a press conference because they don't know how to really hold the microphone. They were scared when they faced those hostilities from the people on the street. And then they keep talking to themselves, you know, we are parents, then we can do it. And that really made me really, really sad. July 2014, so with the joint petition for legislating the Sewol Ferry Special Act, we collected 3.5 million petitions. It's actually quite large in number. Later on, we collected more, so actually, well, between us, like activists were jokingly saying that we cannot do any joint petition things anymore in the future because it's already outnumbers. With any other subject, we won't be able to collect this much petitions until we die. Protest today, the family started to protest in front of the National Assembly because the government did not want to pass the law to set up this independent investigation committee. They want to really try to play a role, like play tricks to make it very unindependent. Survived students, you know, finally they were courageous enough to stood up and they say that they want to march from Ansan to the National Assembly to support their friends' parents who are protesting in front of the National Assembly. And it took almost 2 days full to march from Ansan, their high school, to the National Assembly. And 23rd of July was 100 days after the Sewol Ferry tragedy. So this is the photo of the collected petition. We divided it into 416 boxes, which signifies the April 16th. And actually, this is the memorial altar in Ansan. So it's not in the photo, but at the back, you can see the photos of all those students who passed away. And actually, the family started to march from here. So they put the boxes in front of the photos of their children, and they keep talking to themselves, we can do this. So they bring these petition boxes to the National Assembly. Oh, this is the time when they protest in front of the National Assembly. I don't know whether any of you been to National Assembly in Korea, but it's really, really cold. I think the temperature is actually colder than in other parts of Seoul. It's in the island, yeah. And then families just went there to see the national parliamentarians. They want to ask them to enact a special law. Of course, they were blocked by the police officers. They slept there for almost like a month or two. I went there actually to stay with them because, you know, civil society members, we took a turn, so we had a rotation to be there just in case something happens. And they are very, like, you know, they just talk normally. You saw the lady who was, like, you know, drumming the drum earlier in the video. They talk normally, they sometimes laugh, they eat, and then during daytimes. And then when I pack my stuffs to go home at 9 o'clock in the evening, when I'm about to leave, it's very silent, nobody's in the National Assembly. And I can hear that one mother started to cry, because at night is the most difficult time for them. And one mother started to cry, that makes everybody start to cry. And it's like all howling inside of the National Assembly to make everybody cry. But the next day when I come, they again looks very positive, because they cannot survive if they don't have that kind of strength inside them. When I was with them at the National Assembly, actually I told my friends, you know, if something happened to me, don't tell my parents to do this kind of thing. Don't tell my parents, never ever. They don't need to know about the truth, because I can see how difficult it is for them to actually continue their struggle. And it's about their dignity as well, and also their pride. They also started a hunger strike in front of the National Assembly. You see the lady on the right, from your side, it's on the left, right? She is Russian, and she married Korean. I'll go back to these issues later on, but there are not only student families are in the victims, you know, the groups. There are also the half Korean, half Russian student. There were actually also the Vietnamese family who were on board. Obviously, they could not get much at all support from the government. Also, there are other marginalized groups, even in the victim's family as well. So they actually protest in front of the National Assembly like this. I told you the survived students marching from Ansan to the National Assembly. to actually stand in solidarity with the families of their friends. This is the 100-day commemoration. I still remember this day because it rained a lot, literally. I was at the National Assembly with families, and people were marching from Ansan to the National Assembly, and they come to Gwanghwamun, which is the center of Seoul, so that and because we had a memorial altar inside Seoul as well to pay respect to those who passed away. And then we marched towards the Gwanghwamun Square. Gwanghwamun Square, unfortunately, is very close to the Blue House. Police got scared, they blocked all the road, they didn't let us go in, and they say that only family members can go. Those left-wing civil society members, those individuals who are not members cannot pass this road because they are going to make troubles. And of course family members like, oh, we cannot leave these people behind, we stand in solidarity with them. There are fightings, shoutings, ongoing until 3 a.m. in the morning. And after, you see the photos of those people who passed away, and then there are actually family members who are holding those banners, and we had to push the police to pass the road. In August, we had Pope Francis coming to Korea. So I was also sitting on the left side of the family members had this press conference to give messages to Pope Francis. Pope Francis was very, very generous enough to give some private messages to the family members, also mention about families at the public press conference and things like that. 16th of August, a family member who continued his hunger strike for almost 46 days could have a chance to meet Pope. Of course, it was not in the government plan or Vatican's plan, but Pope was actually, coming out of the car, and he walked towards to this person and then actually grabbed his hand, which I heard it was very unusual for Pope to do that kind of thing. This man, a father of a young girl who passed away during the Sewol ferry tragedy, he went on a hunger strike for 46 days. And also in solidarity with them, of course, not everybody can continue hunger strike for 46 days. So we do relay hunger strike in solidarity with them. And more than 20,000 individuals actually joined the relay hunger strike. And surprisingly, Koreans living in Canada, they also, until today, they continue to do this relay hunger strike in Canada. September, we collected additional 4.8 million photos. I think the photo is actually gone. I don't know why it's not here. It's actually the photos of the people, the 4.8 million petition we collected additionally, which make it 8 million. And what they do is they hold a box, and I think you saw from the earlier the video that they walk 3 times and they bow on the floor. And they stand up and they walk 3 times again and bow again on the floor. It's a kind of extreme way or peaceful way, in other way, to show how they are desperate about the issue. They wanted to march from Gwanghwamun Square to the Blue House, again blocked by the police officers. When they blocked by the police officers, they stood there and then they couldn't march, so they just bow on over and over and over again from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then they were all exhausted and they had to go back home. The 31st October, agreement on the Sewol Ferry Special Act was actually made between ruling party and the opposition party. And November 7th, the Sewol Special Act passed the National Assembly. And these are the names of the National Assembly members who support or abstain or denied or refused to accept the Sewol Ferry Sewol Ferry Special Law. Only 12 out of 300 rejected the Sewol Ferry Special Act. In December, some photos are really missing. Okay, so in December, we organized the international conference, the Sewol Truth-Seeking Process. So we actually invited 9/11 victims and also Fukushima victims, and also their investigation committee members to hear from their stories about how they actually investigate after the Sewol Ferry incident after the 9/11 happened, and how they actually survived after Fukushima happens. Okay, 한 장이 없어졌어. sorry, I think there's some problems with the... Yes, that table, I want to show that table.
This one?
Yes. Am I speaking too fast? Is it okay? See?
This one?
Yeah, it's missing.
Okay.
Maybe it's National Intelligence Service. It tried to stop me from. Anyway, I can actually briefly tell you about the Sewol Special Act before we move to the enforcement decree. The Sewol Special Act, the thing that we really fight for is how they compose the investigation committee. Because if there are too many people from the government side, it is not going to be independent. And of course, the government is not going to allow us to put all our people to be in the team. What their agreement is 5 recommendations from ruling party, 5 recommendations from the opposition party, 2 from Korean Bar Association, 2 from Supreme Court, and 3 from victims' families. Can anyone remember how many people in total? So it's 17 in total. So we have to calculate very well. You know, you have to think about whether we can actually take the more than majority to make a decision and things like that. I don't want to go into details because there are long stories about who is going to be the chairperson, you know, how the process is going, but that's so nitpicky, so I don't want to go into details. But eventually the Sewol Special Act has passed. Not to the extent that families and civil society wanted, but to a certain extent that we wanted. 다음 거 보여줄 거예요. That's okay. 그냥 하자. Oh yes, lovely. It's now there. But I explained everything earlier, so you can see the pie of which is the biggest and largest. But in Korea, I don't know whether it happens in Germany as well. When they pass the law, they don't write in details in the law because then the National Assembly members cannot reach an agreement. So they put the basic principles and standard. But when it comes to discuss the details, like for example, how many people, how many researchers that you're going to give to this investigation committee, that kind of thing is decided by the administrative body. And we call it as an enforcement decree because it's about how we're going to enforce this law. People thought that, okay, the Sewol law, it has passed, now they're going to set up the investigation committee, so everything will be okay. But then the government come with the enforcement decree. 28th of March this year, they announced the enforcement decree. 2nd of April, family members, 52 family members shaved their head in terms of protest. I'll tell you why later. But even so, on 9th of May, the government enforced the enforcement decree. Actually, and they limited the scope of investigation. The enforcement decree said that this committee can only investigate those things already provided by the government. So they cannot get the new information. They, to get the information, they have to investigate Coast Guard, you know, the ministry of different ministries, even Prime Minister. When they ask them the in details information, they just drag what's on their website and they submit it. Why? Because this investigation committee do not have any legal power to enforce those kind of investigation. So that's why people actually shave their head and also working very hard and asking for the cancellation of this enforcement decree. But you know, when you hear it, it's very complicated, isn't it? Like, you know, December the Ferry Act passed and there's another enforcement act. Obviously, South Korean people also think the same. General public think, oh well, the law has passed. They've been, you know, fasting on the streets for so long. Why they're struggling again? What the hell is enforcement decree? Maybe they are shaving their head because they want more compensation. You know, they got everything that they want. Why they're fighting on the street? And I think government is actually using this trick to make it very complicated that without detailed explanation, people really do not know what is going on. Let's go back to the rise of the Sewol ferry. We say the 9 missing victims are still there. In Korean culture, it's very important. I think in some most Asian culture as well. to have the person's body to actually to put into the grave, or to when the person dies. So actually missing victims' main call is the rise of the Sewol ferry. I personally do not think that it's easy to find any parts of their body, but still, if the missing victim thinks that that is necessary, then I think the government should actually rise the ferry. Also, not only to that one, crucial evidence might be there. We have to find out whether there's any bump in the ferry, whether it was hit by something, or whether it was like just fallen down for whatever reason. And unless we see those scratches on the boat, we don't know what happens. And also there might be some items still there belong to the victims. And then we can actually use it as a tool for safety education for future generations when you rise it. The government decided to rise the ferry after long discussion and long fight. Again, they denied the participation of the family members to investigate whether the process is properly done. The government keeps saying that, okay, it's fine, we'll do our job properly, so don't worry, you don't have to come here. So they initially blocked the family members to monitor the process. I think this is Sewol Ferry Victims Support Act. It's about the compensation. It passed to the National Assembly on 12 January 2015, but scope of the victim is very narrow. For example, you are not only thinking about those students who are on the ferry, there are actually people who are working there, or teachers, right, who are with the students. Some teachers are contract workers. They are not considered as a death during their official duty, so they could not get a compensation properly from the government compared to those who has a full-time contract job, even though all of them were there to save these people. Also part-time workers, irregular workers, they couldn't get proper compensation from the company. Supporting period, only 1 year for the financial compensation, and also like only 5 years for trauma for the family members. When I went to New York this April, until today I could see there are posters saying that the government will provide some, the psychological help for those traumatic people from the 911. Not only family members, I myself, I have to go and hug my mom for 30 minutes when I go to see family members of the Sewol Ferry victims, because I feel so sad when I come back home. Lawyers, my friends, activist friends, who spend the time with families for more than a certain period of time, they all go to see their psychiatrists. Because they cannot the burden is too much, they cannot actually handle it by themselves. The volunteers in Jindo, when the body first come out from the sea, there were a group of volunteers who actually washed the body before family members to see. How about their trauma? Who is going to be responsible for that one? That they are not actually included in those Sewol Ferry Victims Support Act. Family members signed about this act because the government says that unless you sign until this date, we are not going to provide any compensation. But then they all decided that we sign now, but we do not want money now. We want money when the truth investigation is actually set up. So they signed, but they decide not to receive money right now. Human rights violation. Fun part. 548 people arrested from April 2014 and May 2015. I think Hans already gave you the brief explanation about situation in South Korea. As an activist, when I made a speech at the UN earlier this week, I was also saying that human rights was once a pride in Korea. Korea was famous for having this human rights record with economic development. We are actually, the rising star of Asia, which achieved both human rights achievement as well as economic development. Now I have to come here, present in front of you about my situation of my own country, and I really grieved when I talk about this kind of issues. Because it's really sad to say I'm not really happy to come foreign country and talk about how bad my country is. But that's the reality. As of July 2015, 7 people were detained, including lawyers and journalists, and obviously excessive use of police forces are there. My friend, my dear friend, who is in prison right now, his name is Legun Park. He's one of the most prominent activists in Korea. He has been in this field for more than 30 years. Actually, he was detained in every single administration. He was detained last administration because he was opposing the Korea-US FTA. The one before, no, there was the Yongsan Force Division cases was last administration. He was detained again the previous administration because he was opposing the Korea-US FTA. So we halfly jokingly say that he was actually arrested by every government when there is new government coming in. And this time, the Sewol ferry incident. The frame the government is using that civil society members are brainwashing these naive, innocent family members. And they teach them, quote unquote, to how to protest on the street. So these poor innocent families are being brainwashed, they're not that stupid by the way, by the civil society members, and that's why they're protesting so hard. And this one, who has a vicious, the prison history in his life, is the headmaster of all this, the protest. He was charged under the violation of various issues, act on assembly and demonstration, obviously. Also criminal charges, which is actually severe punishment than act on assembly and demonstration, which is obstruction of business, obstruction of public traffic, all the other reasons. Another charge is that protests cannot be peaceful all the time. You cannot control 5,000 people. Of course, people get violent at a certain point. And because his name was registered as an organizer, the police actually put all the burdens of responsibility of all those violent actions happening during the protest. And that's one of the reasons why he's detained. He asked for bail. His bail is actually in process right now. The court is now discussing whether he's going to be granted bail or not. But all the other minor protesters who were arrested also with him when detained were denied bail. And he's the headmaster, so we are not sure whether he's going to be get the bail and will be able to come out. But we will actually do our best to raise his concerns at the international society as well. Oh, I didn't share the photo of him. Sorry, he's my friend. He's there. And this is the photo I think you already saw earlier about how the police actually blocked the places. This is the Seoul City Council, which is very popular for us to do the protest. And you see police buses around there. People cannot enter to protest. And surprisingly, they're very good drivers. I don't know how actually they can park buses like that. They cannot even, seriously, even if I breathe in like this, I cannot pass between the buses because it's too narrow. And that's actually how they block the whole space so that people cannot protest there. And sometimes they do that more even when the protest is happening inside to prevent outsiders to see inside. I think now they have double layers. They are not happy with one layer, so now they have double layers as well. Police use a water cannon with capsaicin, which is very hazardous, the liquid. People suffer from the rashes and eye disease afterwards. And also, it was very popular, it's tactic by Korean police. If they use it during winter, it's really cold. So that's one of the things that, of course we have guidelines, police guidelines, which is not really always being kept. Because the governments tend to see the right to exercise assembly and association is not people's rights, but it's something that they need to control. So that's why they use this kind of excessive use of force. Lastly, how can he support then? It's a very difficult question, and I also want to hear from you after the presentation, then what will be the best way that we can actually continue these solidarity actions in Munich and also in Korea. It's just like my brief ideas. I think remember the Sewol ferry tragedy. I think that's the most important thing. We had a series of other tragic events in the past as well, but people easily forget. And at the beginning I mentioned to you that it's always, the families really want their children to be remembered by people. So I want you to not forget about what happened in the ferry on the day until like some truth is revealed. we keep urging the government for the transparent and independent investigation. And also, if you can send some solidarity messages to the victims, you know, by hearing that many foreigners are joining protests in other parts of Korea. I know that there are Koreans living in New York, Washington, London, Berlin, Munich. Many areas in the world are having this regular meeting, raising awareness about the Sewol ferry incident, and that actually gives a lot of support and strength to the family members. You know, there are people who are supporting us, and there are people who are fighting with us. It's a very big message to them, and I think that's very important. Lastly, what I wanted to say is that while I was watching the video, that actually comes into my mind that some family members decided they cannot work anymore because they devote themselves to do this protest, and you know, somebody has to do those jobs. So at the beginning, quite lots of them joined the protest, but now they cannot because they have to go back to their work, and there is no compensation or any compensate way of their work to find the truth. And also their children. You know, if it's a single child, and then to protest. So these young children, old children as well, are also traumatized from this incident as well. And also the Danwon High School, the high school now the families wanted to preserve the classroom as a memorial hall to remember those the victims. But now the government is trying to actually remove it and say we have to go back to normal life before the tragedy happens. While we all know the family members will never be able to live the life they used to live before the Sewol ferry tragedy happens. I think that's my presentation, and I look forward to talk to you later about the question and answer.